Okay, so fun fact about Rafic, he has actually spoke at ProfCon for the past 3 years now. So he was in West Yellowstone with us. He's definitely a fan favorite. He doesn't disappoint, so I think you're going to really enjoy this. Okay, so Rafic Sinno is an associate professor of marketing and assistant department chair of business administration at the University of Dubuque. Help me say that,
Dubuque.
Rafic.
Dubuque.
Dubuque. Okay,
Yeah.
should have prepped that. Sorry. His teaching emphasizes an interdisciplinary approach in helping students discover and develop their proficiency in the marketing and communication fields. Given his dedication and commitment to teaching, Rafic received the Faculty Member of the Year Award in 2017 for outstanding teaching ability to motivate students and the earned respect of his peers, and the Wendt Faculty Character Advancement Award in 2021 for advancing excellent moral character in teaching, learning, or living. Wow, that's amazing. Without further ado, Rafic, go ahead and take it away.
Well, thank you so much. And it's so great to be with all of you here today. Looking forward to a very collaborative session and on a topic that I feel is very important to address as we teach our students and prepare our students for success as social media practitioners. So I'm going to go ahead and share my slides with you and proceed to uncover this topic bit by bit. And I'm sure it's something that you all can relate with. So let me get that started here first, and we will be on our way. All right, and just a quick question, if you can just let me know in the chat, can you guys see my slides? Perfect, perfect. Okay, wonderful. Well, let's get started here today. And my topic here for ProfCon 2021 involves looking at burnout. And burnout is a factor I think we can all relate to, especially in the midst of the pandemic that we're still in. We're still hopefully we're at the tail end of it. But you as teachers have had to adapt. I've had to adapt my teaching strategies. Our students have had to adapt. So everyone can kind of look at the whole factor of burnout and on some level relate with it because we had to adjust quickly and abruptly. So we went from face-to-face teaching, all of a sudden we're teaching online or via Zoom. Zoom has become the norm. And this factor not only occurs in cases like the pandemic, but it also occurs in just in the field of social media marketing in itself. And prior to this presentation last year, I talked about the importance of stressing soft skills through emotional intelligence. I felt it's very important to develop a sense of self-awareness, a sense of being able to relate to others. And this topic kind of dovetails on last year's presentation, but goes more in depth into the whole aspect of burnout and looking at how it applies within the social media marketing context. So to get started, I wanted to talk about how we'll explore this subject here. Well, first, we are going to define what burnout really means and its implications. We're going to look at how it applies to social media marketing specifically. And then towards the end, we'll identify ways to address burnout so that we can better prepare our students for success within the field. So that's the whole intention of this. And I wanted to present here today how I came about this topic, how I came about this subject. Certainly, I kind of got a notion of it from what students expect and also what teachers kind of associate with social media. So let's get kind of a grounding first. So I want to build some context for this before we get into the definition and so forth. I'm going to use the chat and I'm going to ask you guys to type in your response here. From a student's perspective, how would they define social media? What would they say? Fill in the blank. Social media is, from a student's perspective, what would they say? Can you type in your response? As teachers teaching students, what do they associate with social media? All right, so we have communication. Troy is saying communication. Nazook saying connection, friends, connection to friends, entertainment. Joe Rice is my life. All right, great. So basically connection to friends, keeping up with others. And let's go for a couple more responses here. Okay, so keeping up with others. And if we were to throw in a couple more ideas there, they would say it's for fun, entertainment, relaxing, kicking back. That's what social media is all about. So, when they come into the classroom setting, they expect social media to be this more fun type of channel that they engage in. And it's more for the sake of relaxation and connecting with friends. Okay, so that's their perspective. Now, let me ask you, right, exactly. I get that on board as another common one. So that's where they go to if they're bored. They go and go through and scroll and scroll and scroll, and the endless scroll ensues. So let's take it from the standpoint of the teacher. To you, what is social media? To you, the teacher, what is social media? Okay, catching up with the new generation. Ultimate class distraction. Yep. A mind vacuum, staying in touch online. And great. And so those are some of the perspectives that we have as teachers, right? So we come from different standpoints, given our experience, given our preferences, given for what kind of benefits we receive from social media. We each party defines it a little bit differently. Okay. So from a teacher perspective, to me, I look at social media, and when I think about teaching social media, I think about it from the perspective of teaching how to use social media responsibly to my students. That's the first and foremost thing that comes to my mind. And second, I think about how can I create good digital citizens who are out there and representing themselves and their brands effectively on social media. So that is my interest, and that's my intent, right? So people vary in terms of their definition of what social media consists of. And if we look at Google's definition, if you just type in social media is, and we see a whole list of definitions here: toxic, bad for mental health, which kind of dovetails with the whole aspect of burnout. Fake is social media issues. Social media is good, is addictive. Sometimes it's good for mental health. Sometimes they could say it's destroying society. Some of these are very negative kind of definitions. But if we go to the next aspect of here, I would really want to focus on presenting both the positive and the negative aspects. On the positive side, like you guys had mentioned, it's great to make connections, explore your interests, promote a cause, support others. But on the negative side, it can lead to anxiety, fear of missing out, depression, isolation, self-absorption, bullying, even lead to creating a negative self-image, right? And so all of these factors, as a teacher, you have to address both the positive and the negative sides of being within the field and look at how that impacts you as a person, right? What are you getting from those social media channels? So in general, I like to have that framework in mind and have discussions around that. Now, to kind of further this a little bit more, if we talk about what students aspire to learn, sometimes they come into my class and they're like, okay, we're going to do social media. It's going to be so much fun. I can't wait. This is going to be great. And they say, things like, oh, I want to be a gamer. I want to stream my games on Twitch, or, I want to be a YouTuber and I want to amass all of these fans. And you know what? Those are great aspirations, but sometimes they don't realize the work that goes into it. And even if you get that fame and you get a number of followers and you're able to become a full-time YouTuber, you still experience burnout. So I wanted to share the story here of a very prominent YouTuber whose name is Elle Mills. Is anyone familiar with Elle Mills or has followed her on YouTube at all? I'm not seeing too many responses here, but you'll get to learn about Elle Mills. A huge following on YouTube, very popular YouTuber, especially amongst the Gen Z generation. And she pretty much got to a point where she got a huge following and then she hit burnout, and she recorded a video on that. And I wanted to share that with you. And I'm just going to play the first 3 minutes of this video here. Just a quick warning, if you're around kids, things like that, she does use a couple swear words, but they're used in the context of voicing her frustrations.
Hi, I'm Elle Mills. Hi, I'm Elle Mills. Hi. Shut fuck. What is your dream job?
A veterinarian.
To be a model.
Probably like a zoologist or something.
A police?
An actress.
A YouTuber.
When I was a kid, all I ever wanted to be was a YouTuber. All I ever did was...
And just a quick check, are you guys seeing the video okay and hearing the sound? Yep, okay, great. Just wanted to make sure, thank you.
make videos.
Hey, who's this? Oh, it's me.
Funny enough, I was actually voted most likely to be a YouTuber in high school, and after I graduated, I made a promise to myself that I was gonna do it. So I worked my fucking ass off. I posted, and if there's one thing I love about me, is that I'm one driven son of a bitch. But answer this. What would you do if you achieved your lifelong dream faster than you expected?
Moving on to other news, Filipina-Canadian YouTube star Elle Mills won Breakout YouTuber for the 10th Annual Shorty Award.
You've definitely had moments over the past year that have brought you to 1.2 million in the span of 6 months.
Do you guys know who Elle Mills is? She is someone who I think is pushing the boundaries of YouTube.
Elle Mills.
Elle Mills?
Elle Mills. Elle Mills.
Have you discovered Elle Mills yet?
How are you doing, Miss Mills?
I'm good, how are you?
Crazy for you, touch me once and you know it's true.
It's not what I expected. I'm constantly alone, always unhealthily stressed, and always feel this overwhelming pressure. My life just changed so much so fast. My anxiety and depression keep getting worse and worse.
I'm crazy for you.
I started getting panic attacks, and it's starting to scare me. I'm literally just waiting for me to hit my breaking point. This is all I ever wanted. And why the fuck am I so fucking unhappy? It doesn't make any fucking sense. You know what I mean? Because, like, this is literally my fucking dream. And I'm fucking so unfucking happy. It doesn't make any fucking sense. It's so stupid. It is so stupid.
Over on her Twitter, she released a video which she has subsequently removed that showed her visibly distressed and agitated, saying that although she's had all these successes, the pressure of social media and the pressure of making these videos has overwhelmed her, to the point that she expressed the sentiment that she was miserable.
All right, so I share that video, and she's not the only YouTube star who's experienced the burnout. Other YouTubers have also expressed their sense of burnout, or other social media influencers have done the same. But I share that video to say, you know, there is a consequence to this constant engagement, and there is a consequence to using a particular channel or avenue. And as much as there's the positive side to it, we need to address and acknowledge some of the negative aspects that can occur as a matter of using a certain piece of technology, using a channel, posting so much content, and constantly being plugged in, so to speak. So that's what happened to Elle Mills. It's not that she wasn't passionate about YouTube. She definitely was. She was passionate about her community. She's a great storyteller. You can tell in the video that she did a great job with that. But it's still, even with all of those great qualities, it still took a toll on her. So I wanted to present that context, and I also offer that as a way for my students to reflect upon the field overall, because I want them to, when they enter the field, I want them to be ready to engage within the field, but I want them to be able to also start to tell when that field is starting to affect them, and then how they can eventually address those particular occurrences and get over the factor that that they're experiencing that burnout factor. So Elle Mills is a story in point, but if we go furthermore to kind of talk about this in further context, when students take my social media marketing class, I have them go through the Stukan simulation. And when you're using the Stukan simulation, you're actually posting a lot of content to various channels to attract different audience segments, right? And to engage different audience segments. And on the Stukan simulation itself, to be able to be successful in it, you do have to post a lot of content. And what my students come back to me and say is like, oh, I can't just make one post. I need to post more and more content. I need to make this content specifically targeted towards a certain market segment. And I say, yes, this is the whole aspect of social media marketing. You are actually doing some real relevant work, and you are the face of the brand. And as you are the face of the brand, there's a lot of pressure on your shoulders, right? To be able to post that content consistently and to be able to represent the company at the same time and all of its stakeholders. So this is the first aha moment. And when students come back and give me the feedback, they're like, oh, I didn't realize this was going to be so much work. And so that got me thinking, okay, well, some students towards the end, they're like, wow, I didn't realize I would be working so much. So this is one aspect where I caught the sense of the whole notion of burnout. Like, in other words, their expectations versus reality, where there was a big gap in between the two. The other aspect that brought this subject to my attention and really brought it into the forefront was recently I attended the Adweek virtual conference. It was Social Media Week for New York, and they had a particular a part of their conference where it was Alfonso Terrell, and he's the global head of social and editorial for Twitter. And during that conversation that they had with Jess Zafiris, during that conversation, they talked about the whole toll of mental health, and they talked about dealing with burnout. And what Alfonso kind of mentioned is that the pandemic really accelerated things because everything went online, and everything went online very fast. So you have much more content being put out there. You have to respond to customers readily. You have to be able to address different issues. And then, of course, there were social unrest issues and so forth. So in dealing with that and responding on that, basically the social media managers felt they had to be online 24/7, and it started to take a toll on their mental health. They couldn't break away from it. And so what he had done with his team is he advised them, hey, you know what, when you're off, you're completely off, and I'm responsible for that. So please take that time off. And he also advised his team to have counseling and therapy as well to deal with the burnout issues that they faced. So this became a prominent type of theme that I was starting to see come across the board. And as I started to explore it a little bit more, I started to tap into the different social media manager communities, and I would see memes like this one being shared. So social media managers at 23, share at 74. So as you can tell, share looks so much better here than the social media manager at 23. And this really speaks to the whole notion of how much stress is placed on a social media manager and what they have to deal with. Another meme speaks to the whole aspect of having that disconnect, right? And so this meme kind of really explains it quite well. So we see here in the picture, the girl in the background, hey, what's wrong? him, I forgot to post, right? Talking about a social media manager and having that anxiety that at night, I have to be able to post or do something for my social media channel, or what if I have to deal with a crisis? This is the whole concept of it. So I started to see these memes. And furthermore, when I dug into it further, I saw that basically there were so many articles out there that spoke to the whole aspect of how taxing the profession can be on social media managers. So if you see this headline from Digiday, always on trauma machine, social media managers grapple with burnout, leaving the industry. So a lot of people are leaving the industry because they don't know how to deal with burnout. So this is the factor that really kind of brought it forefront into my attention as a teacher. I'm thinking, okay, well, how do I address this in my classroom, right? How do I go about really speaking about this issue within my classroom? And how do I prepare my students? When I'm seeing news article after news article, I'm seeing it voiced on podcasts, I'm seeing social media manager groups that I follow online, they speak to it. And so this really brought it forth into my attention. So the question I wanted to really address furthermore, as I kind of started to see this topic boil up, is to look at what is burnout exactly. And so if we look at burnout here, in May 2019, the World Health Organization included burnout in its classification of diseases. And this was in the 11th revision of the International Classification of Diseases. So this is something that is something that impacts people worldwide, right? And the World Health Organization even classified it as a disease. And so when we look at the definition of it, burnout here, and this is directly from the World Health Organization, is a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress. So it's stress that occurs from doing the job, from doing the work, that has not been successfully managed, okay? So there's all of this stress, but then you have not necessarily addressed how you manage that stress successfully. And if you look at it, some of the symptoms related to it are exhaustion, mental distance from the job, even cynicism that occurs, and then even reduced professional efficacy. So you're not as efficient at doing your job as possible. And they add on to that burnout refers specifically to the phenomenon in the occupational context, so within the occupation, and should not be applied to describe experiences in other areas of life. So this is directly related to the occupation, not in other areas of your life. So this is directly dealing with being, for example, a social media manager. So if we look at that, let's really examine the occupational context, and look at how it applies then to social media marketing. All right. So the occupational context for social media managers, let's talk about that real quick. Social media managers are, I believe, some of the most undervalued, highly trained individuals within an organization. They are your copywriter, they are your video editor, they are your customer service support person, right? They are part of your strategy and strategic team. They run your campaigns for you. And sometimes they don't necessarily get the props or even the salary that they deserve. And so the occupational context for social media managers is really something important here to consider as we look at what our students are going into. So if we look at what social media managers do, and like I said previously, they are undervalued for what they do. They create effective copy, they manage multiple social channels, they produce highly interactive content for those channels, they develop and foster social communities, they respond to crises, and sometimes they have to respond to crises at 12 a.m. in the morning or 2 a.m. in the morning, and they have to deal with a client at that point in time because of a perceived crisis that is occurring. They have to provide excellent customer service and support, and then they have to prove the ROI of their social media campaigns and initiatives, because management is often very skeptical about the efficacy of social media management, social media marketing. Even though you can track a lot of its success, a lot of upper management is still not sold on social media marketing or its effectiveness. So there's also additional stress of just proving that, hey, social media marketing is really working for you. Okay. And then they have to constantly adapt to industry rules, regulations, algorithm changes, guidelines, and that's just a quick snapshot of that, right? So there's a lot here that they add to an organization. And then if we look at the compensation, and this was based on a quick look at Indeed.com, 1.8 thousand job postings, the average that they earn is $45,769 per year. And the salary range can go from $45,000 to $124,850, depending on their experience. So if they're just entering the field, they're a mid-level professional, senior level professional, will determine how much salary that they earn. But the average doesn't really speak well for the skills that they have. So I feel like a lot of social media managers are truly undervalued within the organization itself. And this can also add to the whole stress factor and the whole burnout factor that they experience. And then if we also look at a more substantive report here, this one was done by the Institute for PR, Reagan Communications, and the University of Florida. They conducted a survey of about 450 social media professionals to assess their career path, their challenges and opportunities. Now, of the 450, 379 respondents were included for this particular report. And this was done as of October 2020. And the report is the career path of a social media professional. And here's what they found. In terms of work, they work 41 to 59 hours per week on average. That's what they've noticed. And 57% of the respondents did not anticipate being in their current role for more than 2 years. They didn't elaborate on why or the reason for that, but this was the stat that they found from the initial feedback that they got. 70% of the respondents want to be promoted in their positions, so they start at a particular role, but they didn't see necessarily any upward mobility. But only 40% saw the possibility of actually being promoted. And the last one here, which is actually for us as educators, an important note here, is that 80% of social media managers, and when I looked at the demographics, most of them had bachelor's degrees, and most of them had been managing a social media account for about 7 years for their company. So of these respondents here, 80% of them had not taken a college course on social media marketing because it was not offered. Okay, so this provides us an opportunity, and I want to circle back to that opportunity a little bit later in the presentation. All right, now here's the thing. Social media managers and practitioners, they express reservations about always being on 24/7, 365 days a year, yet they're passionate about the field and they appreciate the field. So there's the burnout factor, but at the same time, there's something keeping them in the game, or they appreciate social media for what it is, and they would like to be able to participate in it in some way. Okay, so this is the factor here that is also keeping people within the field, although they might not necessarily retain that position that they're currently in. All right, so the question now really kind of turns into the next aspect, okay? And the next aspect is then, if we know that this is the case and we know what's happening and we know that social media managers face this burnout factor, then how can we guide students through the challenges of social media marketing? And this is the opportunity for us. This is the opportunity for us to really help our students and get them prepared for a very challenging and very demanding field. And I think it's only going to get more challenging and more demanding as it continues to grow. So one is, I want to focus on helping students identify and developing the traits to help them succeed. You know, we can talk about skills, and our classes do definitely touch upon the skills. How do you put together a social media strategy? How to put together a content calendar, right? How to respond to negative comments, etc. These are particular skills. But on top of the skills, are we graduating people who have the traits to succeed? And we'll talk about that in more detail coming up here very soon. Next is, do we provide them with real world perspectives on the challenges and burnout factors that they may face? They may not necessarily be prepared. And so we need to make sure we prepare them for those particular burnout factors that they may face, okay? So these are the two ideas here. And from those ideas, let's talk about the very first one, is helping students identify and develop the traits to help them succeed. Well, if you look at social media manager traits, the successful social media manager is able to empathize with all stakeholders. Okay, whether it's another colleague or a customer or a board member, they're able to empathize with them. In other words, they're able to see the issue from their standpoint, and they're able to see the impact of the issue from their standpoint, right? Second, they're really good at time management. They create time to focus on important value-based projects and tasks, and that's very difficult when you're always putting out fires. So you have to be able to carve out that time to really look at the next social campaign that you can put out that will help promote your company and its brand and establish more brand awareness and engagement with the audience. But how do you do that when you're always on fire, right? So these are the traits. You have to have that trait. You have to be able to be creative. You have to be able to come up with new ideas, because other competitors are out there with very creative messages. And if yours doesn't stand out, it won't necessarily get the attention that it deserves. So you really need to be able to be creative and offer creative output. You also need to be able to manage stress. And stress is very important in terms of how you set up your boundaries and how you communicate with team members. It's very important that you're able to communicate with team members, especially your manager, when you're experiencing a certain level of stress. And then perspective taking is very important. Can you stay in the game long enough by looking at the long-term outcome? Not just, maybe something went wrong during a particular campaign. Put that to the side. Look at the long-term outcome. What are you trying to achieve? Maybe it's a small blip in terms of a big goal that you're trying to achieve. And so that perspective taking is very important. And then a social media manager also needs to be on top of things and address problems proactively. I believe that if we structure exercises, class assignments, and so forth to help develop these traits, that our students who are going into the field will be better able to address the burnout factors that are experienced within the field and the challenges of the field itself. So to kind of talk about that aspect of it, to look at developing these traits, what I suggest is looking at getting them exposure and getting them practicing on particular types of assignments and group projects. So the first thing here, for example, you can see client-based projects. So they are responsible, for example, developing a social media campaign for a client. That will help them create that empathy, because they need to see the problem perspective from the problem from the client's perspective, right? The second thing too, in Stukan simulations, I actually have them work on teams within teams, and they have to come up with a strategy together. So that helps them collaborate. That helps them look at time management, looks at task distribution and so forth. And they have to be able to communicate well with each other and resolve conflicts in terms of the strategy or the direction they want to use in pursuing that simulation. This also corresponds with group assignments and in-class activities that help them really address these particular factors or skills. So if we do this right here, they can start to generate these traits. But the focus is not necessarily say on just the skills, but are they exhibiting these traits? So my last two ideas right here is do a personal goal setting exercise, okay? Have I showed more empathy? How have I showed more empathy? Make that a goal that the student tries to achieve, right? Not just necessarily increasing the number of likes or the number of engagements within the simulation itself, or having a successful creative idea for a client-based project, but actually looking and reflecting back. Am I being more empathetic? How am I being more empathetic? To enable that type of reflection, I think reflection journals and group feedback on these traits right here, how creative you are, how do you manage stress, how do you show resilience, how do you address problems proactively, how do you empathize with others, is also another way that students can start to develop these traits. All right, so this is one idea right here. The other idea is to provide them with real-world perspectives on the challenges and burnout factors that they may face. And to do that, I encourage using guest speakers. So bring in guest speakers and have them talk about the factors of burnout, have them talk about the challenges that they face, have them talk about how they address those challenges with their teams. And if you can't get necessarily guest speakers coming to your classes or to your lectures, then you can use the student expert sessions or the webinars. These provide insights from experts within the field who have actually faced those problems or faced those struggles. The other aspect that I would like to touch upon is role-playing scenarios. Professor Jen Riley for this ProfCon conference gave an excellent session on using role-playing scenarios. So you can address a role-playing scenario. Say, for example, you got a really bad review on Yelp. How would you address that? What would be your strategy? How would you communicate with your team, right? How would you address it as a team all together? And what would be the appropriate response that also conveys the brand values and the brand voice in that response? So role-playing scenarios are really good. Case studies are also great too, to look at what other social media company or other companies have done in terms of their social media strategies and where they went wrong, right? So you learn from other people's mistakes and you get the idea of what happened. Last but not least, and today's keynote speaker, Jack LeBlanc, he talked about this, is doing a challenge. So social media marketing changes all the time. Imagine going into the classroom right then and there, you start with a challenge and they have to address that challenge right on the spot. Or you send them an email and in that email is a challenge that they have to address. And it gives them a real world sense that social media is unstructured. So when they're in the classroom environment, everything is structured, right? You meet Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The assignments are due this day, this day, this day. And social media is not like that. And so to be able to provide them with an environment in which they experience those challenges and hardships can actually help them become more resilient within the field. All right. And the last idea and why I presented those two ideas were basically this final point here. And I love this quote here by Lori Lee Bird. And she said this: you can't unburn burnt toast. Once you're burnt out, you're done. So what we need to do is work together to prevent it. And the strategies here that I'm suggesting help you prevent that burnout factor from happening within a classroom context. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Rafic. That was a really good presentation. A lot of good data. I have a lot of appreciation for our social media manager here at Student, especially after what you shared. Christina does an amazing job. You've probably worked with her before.
Yes, she's done an outstanding job, and she makes you feel good. That's what's great about her, and her communication strategy is always very, very positive and very uplifting. So yes, I really appreciate the work that Christina does, and your whole entire social media team does a great job.
Yeah, for sure. I'll pass that on to her. Well, awesome. We're gonna be doing the Q&A here in a few minutes. So make sure to put any questions that you have for Rafic here in the chat, and I'll make sure to ask him those so he can answer them. While we're waiting for questions, I did post the links to the next breakout sessions. So here in about 20 minutes, we'll have another round of breakout sessions. We have some really great speakers lined up. Mary Beth Kuzmeski, who teaches at Oklahoma State University. And she has a really good session lined up. I've talked to her about what she's going to be discussing. Lots of good tips for student engagement in any size class. So she teaches hundreds of students in one course at Oklahoma State University. So she is definitely going to have a good session for us. And yeah, check out the rest of them. We have Elisa Agazzino, Jeff Larson, and Brian Sheehan, who teaches at Syracuse. Okay, so we have our first question here. Do you see a role of boredom in burnout?
I think I can perhaps ask a follow-up question with that, but here's my initial take on it. I think basically, if you're bored, you're not engaged. So something is causing you to become bored. And it could be a sign that you're starting to disengage or not necessarily put forth all of your effort, right? So the question is, why are you bored, right? And is that a sign that you are being burned out? If it is, then you need to start to address it earlier on and ask yourself, well, why am I experiencing this? You know, what's leading to that? And what can I do to address it? Does that answer your question? Okay.
Awesome.
Thanks, Nizu.
Thanks, Rafiq. We have another question here from Sherry.
Mm-hmm.
When you're starting out in social media for a company, what is the average time for connections to get made?
In terms of like internal connections with people within the company or
Outside.
outside the company? So in terms of, for example, creating a community. Yes. Okay. That would vary and depend, you know, on your social media strategy and your level of engagement with your community. So sometimes I feel like to really create a good community, if you have very small resources and you're just kind of starting out with it, you have maybe one person, two people working on engaging that community, that can take quite some time and to really have like a sense of community. So a community, I feel you get it started, you host a place or a platform for them, and then eventually they start engaging. And they start to engage on their own because they have a connection with the brand, but they may also like the product itself. So I'll give you an example. Myself, I love fountain pens. I absolutely love fountain pens. And I joined a community that was a part of Goulet Pens. So Goulet Pens has a Facebook page. They have a community there that supports them and is part of their fan page. I started to engage bit by bit with them, but it was after 6 months. Right after seeing what everyone else is posting, how members of the community were interacting and so forth, even though I love fountain pens and I appreciate the subject, it took me a while to kind of fit in within that community itself. So it will depend on the product that you're selling. It will depend on the community itself and how they find value in that product. I would say on average, it probably takes you maybe 6 months to a year to get some kind of engagement really going, or some true engagement going, depending on the resources and your strategy.
Awesome. Thanks, Rafiq.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions for Rafiq before we head out to the next breakout sessions? Okay, here's another. Would you consider adding some strategies from positive psychology as a way for the students to avoid burnout?
Yes, yes. My session last year, in fact, Marty really kind of really addressed that more specifically. I talked about leveraging and using emotional intelligence and teaching emotional intelligence concepts within the classroom. I feel like when you are able to look at yourself and reflect on how you feel about a certain situation or a certain problem that you're facing, and you're able to articulate how you feel about the situation appropriately to a manager or to a colleague, you're better able to address how that situation is impacting you, and people can better empathize with you because they know exactly how you feel about the situation itself. And so to do so in a professional manner and in a conducive manner is at the heart of emotional intelligence. And I did in that previous session have strategies on how you can use emotional intelligence within the classroom context.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Rafiq.
You're welcome.
I really enjoyed your session. I think everyone else did too.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining. We're having a great final day of ProfCon. I'm going to be sad when it's over, but also a little bit happy. I hope you have a great rest of your day. We're going to have another round of breakout sessions. I'll post the links again here. Make sure to join those here in about 15 minutes. There we go. All right. Thanks, Rafiq.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you for joining me today. Appreciate it.